Don't change your dream to match your reality. Change your conviction to match your destiny. A warm welcome to our esteemed guest, Ms.Deepa Gopalan Wadhwa, our CEO, Mr. M.O. Kuriakose, principals, staffs, and all the students of all the schools present here today. I, Eva Peter, will be your host for today's session of Coffee at TRIS, an event that is held to inform and inspire students with a variety of subjects with the help of a well-respected guest speaker. I am delighted to introduce our guest for today, Ms.Deepa Gopalan Wadhwa, who has had a very impressive walk of life so far. Ms. Wadhwa had been a career diplomat who joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1979 and retired in December 2015. She has served as Ambassador of India to Japan, Qatar, and Sweden. She was accredited as Ambassador to Latvia and Republic of the Marshall Islands. During her career, she has also held other significant assignments in Geneva, Hong Kong, China, Netherlands, the International Labour Organization, and the Ministry of External Affairs. During her career spanning over 36 years, she has handled a wide China and Japan. She has also participated in international conferences and negotiations related to climate change, sustainable development, disarmament, and human rights. Alongside, she was instrumental in the active promotion of India's economic interests in areas of trade, technology, investment, and energy security during her postings in Europe, the GCC, and Japan. Ms. Wadhwa is currently chairperson of the India-Japan Friendship Forum and is on the governing council of the Institute for Chinese Studies and Asian Confluence based in Shillong. She also serves as independent director and advisor on a few boards of companies. It is a very great pleasure to be in the presence of such an inspiring personality. It is now time to listen to her message and words of wisdom. Over to you, Ms. Wadhwa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Mr. Kuriakose. Wonderful again to interact with you and everyone else here, members of the faculty, the principal, students, teachers. Today I think it's particularly, today is kind of Guru Purnima, it's the day when I think teachers and gurus are very important. So I think I must actually pay my respects to all the teachers. It's one of the most noble careers that you could ever have, and we've all benefited from you all. Dear young friends, so happy to see all of you from different walks of life. I'm Malayaliana, for those who know, Tamil for those who know Tamil. So, I'm very much located from the south. For me, home is Kerala, but I was in Chennai. So at one time I was very much like one of you, but I think you all have far more energy, you all have, idealism, enthusiasm, and much smarter than my generation was. But I'm sure like everybody else, like I had at that stage, you must be having doubts at what career should I choose, and also wonder about, about the career content. What are you going to do? What is the career about? And why should you make a choice in a particular career? So today I'm really talking to you all about the IFS, the Indian Foreign Service, as a career option. I joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1979. There were not too many women who joined at that time. But I must say that I have never regretted joining the service. It's been a wonderful career, and I spent almost about 36 of my life, years of my life in the service. So I want to talk about not only the IFS, but I'm going to just talk about some aspects, and I want to respond to your questions. So I think that is going to be much more, I want this to be an interactive session. Without any hesitations, ask me anything that you want to ask, and just think I'm a kind of a mutashi that you all have in your homes that you talk to, and feel free to talk to me, okay? And ask whatever doubts you have. All right. So I'm very, very also happy to be here at this part of coffee at TRIS, I think it's what it's called. program where many eminent people have spoken before me. So what I plan to do is I plan to speak for about 35 minutes. And then I'm going to grade myself on the questions you ask me. So if you're paying attention to me, you will ask me questions. If you don't, I will think you haven't listened to me. Yeah? So please, I think it's very important for you all to prepare questions and listen to what I have to say. I will, I will talk to you a little bit about what is the IFS, what is the Indian Foreign Service. As you know, by definition, it's a diplomatic service of the government of India. And it is entrusted with carrying out India's relations with the world. So every country in the world has its own diplomatic service. Ours own, evolved because we were not a free country. So unlike the Indian civil service, which was there from the time of the British, the Indian Foreign Service came into being actually in only 1946. And, it's... We inherited it from the British, but we were looking at our own priorities when we became an independent country. So what is the primary aim? We talk about foreign service. What does the foreign service do? Every country has interaction with the rest of the world, and I think more so now in a globalized world. So you have a foreign policy. What is the primary objective of this foreign policy? I must say, I hadn't thought of it when I joined. The primary objective of actually the foreign policy of any country is its people. It is to ensure the development of its people through these interactions that you have with the rest of the world, but also there are two other elements for the peaceful rise, the peaceful development of a country, and that is that there should be peace on your borders. So there is this element of security, security of a state, and then you have development. So I think these are the primary objectives on which we drive foreign policy of any country. And that is what somebody who goes into the Indian Foreign Service, who joins one of the Indian Foreign Service, is supposed to do. You perhaps know what the IFS is. You have the Union Public Service Commission. When we became an independent country, we set up this Union Public Service Commission to recruit people. And like every other country had a foreign service. We were not a free country, but as we were getting independence, we realized that we needed a foreign service to be able to project our interests in other countries of the world and to be able to get the best that we could from them for ourselves. Am I talking too fast? Should I? Am I okay? All right. So now, so what is the primary objective? Really, the primary objective is to promote the interests of our people in every way that we can. Explain that to you a little bit. Now, the Foreign Service itself, just to tell you, our Foreign Service is not a very big Foreign Service, Indian Foreign Service. It came into being in 1946. Actually, it is October the 9th, 1946 is when the Indian Foreign Service, the British were still here, when it was the day of the flag raising day, so to speak. But even since then, our service hasn't become a very big service. You know how big India is? The service is still relatively small. So it has less than 1,000 regular foreign service officers. And I will tell you how you become a foreign service officer. And I think that is what I really want to talk to you about. But it has a lot of support staff also. Now, what do we do when we join the Foreign Service? I will come back to you on how you join the Indian Foreign Service. You do it through the UPSC examination, the Union Public Service Commission. You all are all in school now. You'll have to go through your basic degrees, maybe get a master's degree. And at some point of time, be aware of this thing called the Union Public Service Commission, which basically has examinations. It's a very fair, open, transparent system by which you write these examinations and you choose the service that you would like to join. And that is to serve the country. So it could be the IAS. I'm sure you all have met police officers, senior police officers or collectors and so on. So the Indian Foreign Service like that is another service of the Government of India. And we are also recruited through the Union Public Service Commission, the UPSC. But the Foreign Service itself, where does it work? So when we are recruited to the Foreign Service, we are basically we are a cadre. So the Foreign Service is called the cadre. The IS is called the cadre, the Indian Administrative Service. The Indian Police Service is called a cadre. And we work with, or we are controlled by the Ministry of External Affairs. So when we go out to work, what do we do? What does a Foreign Service officer do? So the Foreign Service officer basically works in 2 or 3 different levels. So we work in Delhi, in the Ministry of External Affairs, where policy is made, basically what will our interaction with the rest of the world going to be. We also work around the world in embassies. So we have around 180 embassies and consulates in different parts of the world. 123 countries, we have embassies. Any of you who come from the Middle East, who have lived abroad, your parents will certainly know that, they must have gone to the embassy for some reason or the other. Plus, in addition to that, we work in the Ministry of External Affairs. We also work in other ministries, important ministries like the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Petroleum. We also man all the passport offices. So all of you who have passports, when you go to get that passport, remember that that is issued to you by an officer from the Indian Foreign Service, somebody who works for the Indian Foreign Service. So that is what it is. So the size is relatively small. Why I tell you this is that as India grows in importance, I think it's going to be important for us to get more people into the Foreign Service because for these the numbers that I told you, less than 1,000 diplomats that we have, other countries such as even New Zealand, a much smaller country, has more diplomats than us. China has several times the size of diplomats that we have. And in this globalized world, today the world is much more open than when I joined. In this globalized, interconnected world, I think it is important for us to have a larger diplomatic service. So I told you the brief history of the service. Came into being in 1946. So then I think you're going to ask me, and what I'm doing is I'm asking questions to myself and I'm answering them. And from them, I think I can then take on supplementary questions, okay? So my next question is, which I'm sure is in your mind, what is the nature of the job of an Indian Foreign Service officer? What do they really do? And this is not a surprising question because this was a question that was in my mind also when I was young. What exactly do they do? So I want to tell you that diplomacy, which means your relations with other countries, has many facets. It has many different kinds of diplomacy. One is straight bilateral diplomacy. India has relations with Sri Lanka. India has an ambassador and an embassy in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has an ambassador and an embassy in India. This is between two countries, so it's called bilateral. Similarly, that's why I said we have embassies in 123 countries. We have in China, in Russia, Latin America, most countries of the world. So that is bilateral diplomacy. Then you have something called multilateral diplomacy. That is also what an IFS officer does. What is multilateral diplomacy? There are organizations like the UN. You all have heard of the UN, where 192 countries sit together. They're representatives of 192 countries. They sit together and they tackle the problems of the world. It could be disarmament, it could be climate change, it could be human rights. But it's like a big club of people who sit together and say, how can we tackle the issues of the world? How can we help in development of the underdeveloped parts of the world? That's called multilateral diplomacy. And the centers of multilateral diplomacy are New York, Geneva. There are many places in the world, but these are the main, and there is also in Nairobi. And multilateral institutions you will find in different countries of the world. Then now increasingly, we have something called plurilateral diplomacy, which is smaller groupings. So I don't know how many of you know of the ASEAN. The ASEAN is a grouping of countries of Southeast Asia. So all the countries of Southeast Asia have come together in something called, it's a grouping of countries. Like we have SAARC in South Asia. So we have ASEAN there. So this, when you interact with a smaller group of countries, we call it plurilateralism. And then you have even smaller groupings of 3 and 4 countries where countries come together when they have common interests. Now, further than this, so bilateral, multilateral, plurilateral. Don't get worried by these names. It just means how many countries come together, like how many friends come together and form a club. It's like that. And then you have within diplomacy different kinds of work. What are these kinds of work? So you think of one is political work. We call it political work, political relations. So political relations is, it's kind of, if suppose I am posted to an embassy and I'm doing political work, what do? I learn everything that I can about that country. The politics, who are the leaders, who are the political parties. I get to know parliamentarians. I get to know people who influence the politics of that particular country. And then I advise my government on various aspects of the relationship of that country. So that is basically what we call political relations. We also help our leaders to get together. For example, when a Prime Minister of India is visiting the country where I am, that is done by the people who basically do political diplomacy. And then you have economic diplomacy. Now, this is, become more and more interesting. I'm sure a lot of you, because you all are from Kerala, you must be having relatives, or you all yourself must have been at some point of time in one of the GCC countries, somewhere in the Gulf, in Dubai or Qatar or Kuwait or somewhere. So, what we do with those countries, the importance of those countries is economic diplomacy. Because we are dependent on those countries for our oil security, for our energy security, for our oil supplies. So that is another kind of diplomacy where we have to assure that we have markets to sell our products. So we have exports from India. We have to make sure that we have markets and we develop markets. We have to make sure that we're able to get what India needs. I talked in terms of oil. It could be food security. There are different kinds of things that we have to get. We have to import from countries. Very importantly nowadays, we also look to foreign countries for two things, which is investment into India, investment into industry. So they come with two things. They come with finances. The richer countries particularly, they bring in finances to start big factories and industries. And more important than the finances is the technology. Because the more developed countries like in Europe and in the US and so on, they bring that high-level technology into the country, which will help India, which is, as you know, is a developing country. We're not as developed as many parts of the world. We're still a country with a lot of poor people. How we can pull ourselves out. So these are different aspects of economic diplomacy. There is another sort of diplomacy that's called cultural diplomacy. We call it soft power. So what is this? You see, when you're talking about two countries, we're not really talking about governments. What makes governments are the people. So, we have to reach out to the people. We have to make friends among the people. And this is part of the cultural diplomacy. I'll explain to you what it means, for example, you'll all see films. So what we try to do is to promote Indian films in different countries that we are posted. How does that help? That helps because it makes those people understand not only India, but the values that we stand for. That's very, very important. So what do the people of India like? What are the values they stand for? So that they will empathize and understand us better. And I'll tell you how this works is you really, really can make friends this way. I'll just tell you an incident that I had gone to Egypt, and this has happened to me in several countries, but I'll tell you one of the examples of being in Egypt. And I was so surprised that when we were walking in Egypt, wherever people saw me, they said, Amitabh Bachchan, Aishwarya Rai. I was wondering, you see, they knew India through our films and they loved India because of our films. They had a very positive perception and image of India because of our films. This is the soft power of India. Our values. We're a democracy. That's a very, very important soft power that we have. And so through culture. And another very good example is, I don't know, you all perhaps participated in this. Recently, you must have participated, I think, on the 23rd or so of June on International Yoga Day. You must have had some events in your schools. So now, International Yoga Day, how did it happen? This is part of our soft power. So what happened was the Indian government and diplomats like us, like what I did, they go to the UN and say that, yoga is very good for people. This is something that is part of the Indian culture and Indian tradition. And we made the UN, the United Nations, declare a particular day as International UN Day. What do we get out of it? Many countries in the world got to know that yoga comes from India. This is a very, very strong part of our culture. And they start appreciating us more. You know, it's just like friends. When you have two friends and you realize, you know, the other person has a strength, you understand them better, you appreciate them better. So that is a part of cultural diplomacy we have. In addition, there is, of course, what you all perhaps see most, which is we call consular related work. Now, Indians, as you know, have spread out all over the world. So there are about 25 to 30 million Indians in different parts of the world. They could be Indian passport holders. They could be just people of Indian origin who met a long time ago, maybe even a century ago to some parts of the world. Now, what we do when we talk about consular work is we work with the Indian community. We support the Indian community. Of course, they need passports, they need visas, all that is done. But more than that, you know, we make sure that we take care of their interests when they are abroad. So these are the many aspects of diplomacy. This is the nature of the job of an IFS officer, to understand what we do. So what basically happens is we get recruited through the UPSC, which is an examination, open examination system. You have to opt and say, I want to join the Foreign Service. And if you make it to the Foreign Service, you'll have to look at this. Examination system keeps changing, but basically you have to do a preliminary examination and once you qualify, you have to do some main subjects, focus on a few subjects, and then there's an interview. And then if you qualify, you join a service of your choice, and you can, like I did, opt for the Indian Foreign Service. Once you join the Indian Foreign Service, what happens is you have to train first in India. So you train in India for a while, and they teach you everything. What are India's interests? For example, what is India's policy with China? What is India's policy on climate change? Everybody talks about climate change. What is our policy? Where do we stand on climate change? There are different subjects, we are taught for about 2 years. And then something very interesting happens. So an Indian Foreign Service officer then is asked to opt. You can give an option to learn a particular language. Now, why is that? A foreign language. You learn this language because you then specialize in that geographical region. So, for example, suppose you are in the Foreign Service and, you have cleared the exam, you're in the Foreign Service, and you have to make an option to say, what language should I learn? And you decide, I'm going to learn Spanish. So you're sent abroad to one of our embassies to go to a university and learn Spanish. You don't only learn Spanish. You learn a lot about countries that are Spanish speaking. You learn their history. You learn about their politics. You learn about their economics. You become a kind of specialist in that region. And there are many languages, major languages of the world, particularly the UN languages. So there is Chinese, there is, French, German, which is, Arabic, Spanish. So there are several languages that you can opt for, and you go for your first posting, you learn a language. The idea is to specialize in a particular region. So let me give you an example of what I did myself. I learned Chinese. So I went to Hong Kong initially, and I learned to read, write, and speak Chinese. And after learning Chinese, I was posted to China. And, then that is where your career starts. So basically, there is some kind of expertise you develop over time in a particular region, in a particular language. It doesn't mean that all your life will be stuck in China. No. The whole world is there before you to travel, to go where you want, and to work with different countries and different geographies. But we all do have a specialization. And so that is really the nature, in a way, of job in very broad terms, the job of a Foreign Service officer. I'll just quickly tell you what happened really with my own career, so that it's, you can understand when I'm telling you what we did, so how it works for a Foreign Service officer. I wrote my examination in 1979. I trained in India. And then I went to Hong Kong where I learned Chinese. Chinese is a very difficult language, but one learned Chinese. And because I had learned Chinese, I went to university and learned Chinese. And not only Chinese, all about China. You know, you learn much more than just the language, the culture and so on. And then I got posted to China. I got posted to Beijing. So this is very much a career pattern that most young foreign service officers have. After that, what happened was I came back to Delhi. Now, Delhi is the headquarters of the Ministry of External Affairs. So that's kind of our parent department, our parent ministry. And in the Ministry of External Affairs, which is one of the ministries of the government of India, you can work anywhere. You can work in many, many departments, which are, they're actually organized according to geographical regions and subjects. So, for example, let me tell you, where did I work? I worked on Pakistan. So you had a particular, we call it a desk, and that desk worked on India's relations with Pakistan. What did that mean? That meant that I had to know, of course, everything about Pakistan, analyze our relationships. There were many visits to Pakistan. You have to be a complete expert on the country in which you're working, and you have to really support whatever the policy on Pakistan is, analyze, give support, policy support to really the policy makers who are not us, but at the higher level, our political level, because we are a democracy. So this is what you do at another level, that you come back to India and you work on different issues. So when I was in Delhi, in the Ministry of External Affairs, I worked on Pakistan very early in my career. And then I thought, I want to do something different. Why am I telling you this? I want to tell you that there's a lot of variety in what you want to do. You can say, I want to have another experience. So I had done China, I had worked with Pakistan, and I said, let me find out about the United Nations. That seemed something quite exciting. So I asked, and I got posted in Geneva. Now, the United Nations offices are basically in New York and in Geneva. There is also in Nairobi, some other places. But I got posted to Geneva. And there I specialized. And so in Geneva also, there are different subjects that you can specialize in. Disarmament, there is human rights, there is labor rights. There are a lot of subjects that you can. There are different organizations that deal with these subjects. So, for example, I don't know, you all are young, but you must have heard of the International Labour Organization that deals with labor standards. Then there's a Human Rights Commission that deals with human rights. There's something called, the Conference on Disarmament that deals with disarmament. So different subjects are dealt with. Now, what is different about a place like Geneva or New York is not that you're dealing with one country. As I said, you're dealing with another 191 countries. There are 192 countries, so you are the 192nd. You're dealing with another 191 countries. We sit in these big conference rooms, and there you are supposed to project and defend the interests of India. I must tell you, it's an extremely, extremely interesting experience, because that is really like the whole world together in one room or in one place. You interact with all kinds of nationalities. You learn what the interests of India are, how you project them, how you make compromises in the terms of the course of negotiation. So I'll tell you that when I was posted to Geneva, one of my most exciting experiences was really to negotiate the Convention on Climate Change. Today, you'll all take climate change as something you'll all know about, right? At that time when we started, people didn't know what climate change was. They didn't even believe in climate change. So there was a whole process by which we negotiated an international agreement on climate change. And one was a part of that. And what does a diplomat do if you're a part of that? If you're a part of the process, you project India's interests. So there are different kinds of jobs. One thing about the Indian Foreign Service, and since I'm talking about it, is that it gives you an opportunity to work with different kinds of subjects. You never really get bored, because there is so much that you can do. Now, as one went on in service, I of course later became an ambassador. I mentioned the UN, but there is a certain Most people who join the Indian Foreign Service, after about 25 years normally, you can become an ambassador. And what does the ambassador mean? You are sent by your government as the representative of the country to the other foreign government where you go. So, for example, my first country as ambassador was Sweden. I carry a letter from the President of India to the King of Sweden, and the President of India says that here I am sending you a trusted official of mine to your court who will represent the interests of India and help to build relations between Sweden and India. So this is what ambassadors do. And it is, there are many, many exciting experiences I can tell you as you move from country to country. As a diplomat, you have an opportunity to travel the world, but you also, very importantly, travel. Nowadays, everybody travels. What is really important is that you have an opportunity to contribute to the interests of your country. That is really, really very important. And, there have been so many times when we have sat there and negotiated on issues which have been important to our country. I think I forgot to mention, as I was talking at a point of time, that when I returned from China and I was working on Pakistan, can you imagine how important that relationship was? I used to travel very often to Pakistan. We have negotiated many agreements with Pakistan on various things, whether it is our border, of course, we never necessarily reach an agreement, but there were processes of negotiations, of de-escalation when there was tension. So, you're right in the thick of what is happening in the world. And it's an extremely, it's an exciting career. The other thing I must tell you that it is a very satisfying career in the sense that the Foreign Service is taken care of very well. So it is a very, in a sense that, job security is there. It's an exciting, content of the job is exciting. You live in different countries, you get to travel to different countries, and you have a lot of job satisfaction. So, I'm giving you just an outline. Later, I moved on as ambassador to Sweden. I was ambassador to Qatar. When I was ambassador to Qatar, it was very interesting because, in some countries, the Indian population is bigger than the local population. So when I was ambassador to Qatar, there were more Indians and perhaps more Malayalis and, South Indians than they were locals. But what was our interest in Qatar? One was the welfare of our own people. Everybody who goes into the Indian Foreign Service as a career, a very important part of our job is to take care of our people who are spread all across the world. And, there are Indians in every corner of the world. So that is a very important part of our career. But equally with Qatar, a very important thing was what we call energy security. So Qatar was a producer of both oil and natural gas. And as you know, India does not have enough of energy. So one had to, work with them so that we could import liquefied natural gas, which is required for India. So there are different aspects of your job as you go from place to place. I finally was ambassador to Japan, which is one of our most important, I should say, most important and most close friends in the diplomatic world. And that was a completely different experience. So the Foreign Service gives you very varied experiences. You can contribute so much to your country in so many different ways. You can grow personally as a person because you can, you learn so much about the world. You have the excitement of travel. So it's an extraordinary career for anybody who would like to, who feels confident enough to go out and engage with the world. And I have to say that if you aspire for the Foreign Service, you have to make sure a little bit that it suits your personality. And why I say this is because it's a continuous process of education. You keep learning things. So, one day you're in Africa, the next day you are in Mongolia, the third day you may be in New York. You have to be very adjusting. You have to have an interest in, in different countries, in the continuous learning process. And I can tell you myself, I spent 36 years there, and it was an extremely, fulfilling and exciting. And I just cannot tell you what a wonderful career it was. So I know y'all are all, y'all are all now very young, and y'all are, looking at where you want to go. I have to tell you one other thing, which I think sometimes people think, so what is it you have to study to become an Indian Foreign Service officer or join the Indian Foreign Service? You can be anything. We have so many engineers, you'll be surprised. We have medical doctors. We have vets. It is across different fields we have people. And what I'm happy to say is that I think most of them are able to use their education and what they have gained in the course of their education in their jobs. Because today everything is so, in some ways, the world has become much smaller and it's become more specialized also. So, like the IT, for example, today India is an IT power. So if you have an IT engineer who's in the Foreign Service, and we have many of them, they understand what our needs are better of the country, because at every point of time, what we are trying to do is trying to do the best that we can for India. So, no matter what you do, right now you are in school, your parents might say to you that you become a doctor. I told you, medical doctors also, that you become an engineer, or you do political science, or you yourself might want to do many different things. But that doesn't mean that you cannot come back and join the Indian Foreign Service, and that you cannot contribute. Not only will you be able to join, of course, there is this examination process, but the important part is that you will be able to contribute very substantively. And it is really one of the best careers that I could ever, recommend to you. I see a lot of young girls' faces here, and I wanted to tell you something. Because when I joined in 1979, there were very few women who joined. Because in those days, travel wasn't so easy. And I think a lot of parents said they didn't want to send their daughters out so far. We would come back to India once in 3 years or something. Now, there are large numbers of girls joining. I think already, we probably are closer to about 25 to 30% women. Some batches, half of them are women. And there are many reasons for it. Women are more confident, that's one. The world has become a much smaller place. You don't think of travel. Communications is so much easier. So I recall when I went on my first posting to Hong Kong, I would call my parents once a week, because it wasn't, you had to book a call, you would get through, the world was a different place. Today you can talk to them every day. You can FaceTime with them, you can make video calls. The world has shrunk. It's a different world. So I think it is also an equally interesting career for women. And that is something that you all should look at. In terms of job security, in terms of the way you are paid, we're all very well taken care of. And it's really exciting because, you get to have such varied experiences all around the world. So I am just going to, stop with this. And I'm going to ask you all to ask me whatever questions you have. I mean, take your time to ask me. It can be anything, because I recall when I joined, which was, I was about 22 or 23 when I joined. I must say, I really barely knew anything. I didn't know what the Foreign Service was about. And I'll tell you a story, because that will make you feel a little at ease. So when I joined in 1979, Mrs. Gandhi, she came back, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, she came back to power in 1980. And we were all taken as young entrants into the Foreign Service to meet her. And she asked me, and we were sitting there, we were only 2 girls and there were 18 boys in a group of 20. And she asked me, why did you join the Foreign Service? This is Mrs. Indira Gandhi. I must tell you, I was very young, I had no idea. And at that point of time, I really did want to see the world. So I said, ma'am, I want a secure job and I wanted to see the world. And Mrs. Gandhi looked at me and she said, surely there's a better reason for which you joined. You know, we are all young like you. I was a little older than you all are now. I had no idea. I wanted a job. I wanted to travel. It seemed to be a glamorous job. It was foreign service. But I know later what happened was she asked a lot of my other colleagues also, you know, why did you join? And people gave all kinds of reasons. I remember one of my colleagues said, I want to specialize in oil diplomacy. And somebody said something else. And then finally, she came to one of my colleagues and she said, ma'am, it is an honor to serve India. And I want to serve India abroad. And she said, that is the answer I am looking for. You know, at that time we were young, and like you all are young, you know, one didn't know. But I can tell you something, it didn't take me very long to realize what a great honor it was to serve India. It really, really has been a great honor. And, you know, it is a good service. It gives you lots of opportunities, not only to travel, but to work with different kinds of subjects, as I just told you. You know, there's a huge number of subjects that you can deal with, depending on what you've learned, what you like to do. And it really is, it's a very stable, it's a very fulfilling service, because you feel that you have contributed to your country. So with these few words, I want to ask you all to ask me questions very, very freely. Don't hesitate. Ask me anything that you want, because I knew less about the world than you do. And I probably had more questions in my mind than you all could. Thank you very much. So who is ready to ask the first question?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Could you just tell me your name also, dear? Yeah.
My name is Sansi Alba Abraham.
Okay.
And I study in the Rajas International School.
Okay.
My question for you is, what are the essential qualities of an Indian Foreign Service aspirant? And what can or should be his or her political ideology, social and cultural outlook towards various countries, including India?
Okay. That's a very good question, dear. So first, the education qualifications. The education qualifications is you basically need to have just an undergraduate degree. So you can do a bachelor's degree. That's the basic qualification. Increasingly, people are coming with masters. There are even people who are PhDs. There are people who have gone and worked in a particular sector, and then decided to come and write the exam, because you can write the exam till you are 30. Your second question was your second question was about sorry, what was it, Sanjay? Could you repeat it?
What can be his or her political ideology, social and cultural outlook towards various countries, including India?
Okay, so I'll tell you what. Basically, you're an Indian diplomat. You have to believe in your country. You are somebody who is there to represent your country. So any diplomat, whether you're just joined or whether you're the ambassador, you are a representative of your country. And believe me, if you say something about your country, that is taken to be the truth. That is taken to be something that comes from a representative of the country. So one thing which I didn't mention was that if you do want to join the diplomatic service, you must also know your own country well. You will eventually know the country that you go to, and you will learn about international relations and so on. But it's extremely important for you to be able to know your own country very well. And, I don't think there is any concern, when you're out, because you will realize, when you're representing India, when you're out, that India really is a place which is a country which is very, very highly respected in the world. And this was one of my lessons from the Foreign Service when I joined. I did not realize the very, very high esteem in which India is placed in any part of the world. It's not only because of our population, it's not only because of our size, it is because we are a civilization, that we stand for certain values, that we are a democracy, so we have a lot of respect in the world. So basically, I think, have I answered your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That was well said.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
My name is Anna George. I'm studying in grade 7A.
Okay.
I have 3 questions for you.
Tell me, Anna. Yeah.
First question is, how I need to prepare? How can I be a IFS officer? What kind of attitude a IFS officer should be?
Okay. The wonderful questions. So, first of all, I'm not going to say that you're too young to start thinking these questions, because one of the things that you've got to know when you are a Foreign Service officer is what is happening in your own country. You must know your own country well, but also what is happening in the world. So how do you prepare? You're in the 7th grade? Fine. Start picking up one newspaper and start reading it, your favorite newspaper. Just start reading and you get to know what is happening in the world. Look right now what is happening around you, what is happening in Afghanistan, or what is happening, say, in China, what is happening in Japan. Keep just a general interest in what is happening in the world. I think that is important. And you should equally know your own country very well. So I think the preparation can start very, very early in life. And I have to tell you that was one of the things I was always interested when I was young in, what was happening in the world. So I would read. I remember I was in Chennai and I used to read the Hindu newspaper regularly, as to which president has come to India, where is our prime minister gone, what has come, just out of interest. And there is one story I have to tell you, that one impression that was very deep in my mind was that, we had what we call the charge. We didn't have an ambassador, but we had an acting ambassador in China. And he was there at the time, in 1962, I know you're very young, there had been a very major war with China that we had. It was quite a bad war that we had. And after that, relations were pretty bad. So our acting ambassador, he was there at the National Day of China, and there's a huge event, and all ambassadors and many important people were there. And then Mao, you all know about Mao Zedong. So Mao, he said something very bad about India. And what happened was, this representative of ours, a gentleman called Brijesh Mishra, he got up and he walked out of this meeting. It was a huge meeting because it was an insult to his country. His country had been insulted by a foreign leader. That picture in my mind of a man walking out from this big, huge hall full of people because his country had been insulted, somehow had a very deep impression in my mind. The impression of the patriotism, not only that, the honor of India. So I thought the diplomats are people who can stand up to somebody like Mao and say that I will not allow you to say such things about my country. So, you follow what is happening in the newspapers, which is a very nice way to also start preparing at whatever age you are. Just keep yourself aware of what is happening in the world. You eventually, if there is a process, you're in class 7, you finish your school, you decide what to do. You can basically write this exam after your undergraduate degree. So a lot of us, in fact, wrote it when in our years. It was quite common for people to write it in their early 20s. You can write it at 21. Up to you, as you grow up, your options will change. But attitude is an important question you ask. Attitude is, you have to be very adjusting and accommodating. And I'll tell you why that is. You've got to have an open mind. Because today you may be posted in Washington, D.C., you may be in the US. Tomorrow, after 3 years, diplomats are in a country for about 3 to 4 years. After 3 to 4 years, you may find yourself in Mongolia. Or you may find yourself in Sudan. You have to be your nature has to be something which is, very adjustable. You should be able to go to any place that the government sends you, to be able to adjust. And I think one very important thing that I learned in my life is that your curiosity, your interest in learning should never, never end. because the world is constantly changing, things constantly happening. I don't know how many of you, probably the older ones, look at what has happened in Afghanistan or read what has happened in Afghanistan in the last few months and what is happening now in Afghanistan. So, you know, the world really, really changes very fast. So you are like you're constantly in a classroom. Not only does the global situation in terms of security and economics change, your own country changes. So you've got to know about your own country. You've got to know about the other countries. So you're like in a constant classroom. So I think this is one attitude that is important. That is an attitude to be positive and an open mind and be very adjusting, because you can be shunted from one place to the other. But I can tell you something that I did 36 years and from different places, and never did I regret the whole experience of being in the diplomatic service. I hope I answered you, Anna.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My second question is, what is the function of IFS? Being IFS, what you can serve to the Indian society?
Sorry, sweetheart, come again. What was that? Being an IFS?
Being IFS, what you can serve to the Indian society?
Fantastic question. That's a fantastic question. Great question. So all of us, you know, I was saying to begin with, when we joined the government, you know, we work in different areas, which is basically for the development of India. So one is, you know, India is still a developing country. As I was saying, the foreign policy looks at two aspects: the peace and stability of the country to be able to develop. So these are two major pillars. And what you do, whatever you do in the foreign service, is really to be able to ensure that happens. You know, that you're able to reach those two goals of development. So I think it's really it's very important for you to know about your own countries. What are the development needs of your own countries? I think that is something in the IFS that is really, really important to know. And I'll tell you examples of it. So, for example, I was in Qatar. I was the ambassador to Qatar. Now, Qatar is the first time that they ever sent a woman to an Arab country, and I was there. And you know, I then realized one very important thing for India was the need for what we call energy security, because we're in energy, we don't have enough of oil or gas in our country, and we should be able, therefore we are forced to import more than 80% of our needs. So the thing was, how do you negotiate with Qatar so that you are able to get the energy needs of the country? So, you know, this is something that is very important in the IFS, to know what the needs of your country are and to be able to kind of match you know, wherever you are, match what is available in those countries for your own. So increasingly now, when I talk of economic diplomacy, increasingly now we are looking at areas such as really the importance in diplomacy now has become economic diplomacy. You know, what do we do to make India develop fast? You know, we still continue to be a poor country with a lot of people who are poor. So it's really important for us to be able to look at technologies, finances, get industry into India, and what we can do. So we've got to know our own country very well, and we've also got to know the strengths of the country where we are. Did I answer your question, or is there some part of it that you...
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That question is, what is the intake of IFS officer? And
what is what, average? Honey?
What is the intake of IFS? And and average in a year.
Average in a year. Okay. So you know, this varies a bit. So actually, I didn't mean, you know, we have one of the smallest foreign services in the world, which is really not nice because we're such a big country. For example, China, you know, has about, I would think about 4 or 5 times as many IFS officers as India has. So there's been this thing that we feel that we should take more people in. It changes from year to year. Mostly the average was around 20 people they took every year. But recently, because we created many more embassies in different countries. So we opened new embassies in many African countries, in many Latin American countries. So we needed more people to get into the Foreign Service. As a result of which we started taking 35 to 40 in some years. But I think we are back to an average of about 30. I feel it's not enough. I think we should take more people. But that is about the intake every year into the Foreign Service. I really, really strongly believe that if you are a big country, which India is, it is a big economic power in terms of population, in terms of economic power, in terms of the weight we carry in the world. I think we should have a much bigger diplomatic service. And I do believe that the government should be actually taking in more people. But right now, this is roughly the numbers. So I wouldn't be surprised if this year it'll be about between 25 and 30 that they would take it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. I hope one day that I see you in the IFS. No? I may not be there, but I'd love to see you there.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am.
Another question.
Good evening. Sure.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
I am Vijay Haridas.
Yes, Vijay.
I am a teaching faculty of Shalom Residential Public School and as well as Raja International School.
Okay.
First of all, I would like to thank you for spending your valuable time for us, ma'am.
Most welcome.
I just want to ask you, how has your experience prepared for you for this role, ma'am? And what was your greatest strength for that?
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. That's, so I'll tell you, when I joined, I was trying to tell you that when I joined, it was not very common for women to join the Foreign Service, for very, very obvious reasons. Because one of the things was that a lot of parents, including my own, said, how can we send a daughter off so far away? For a man, it was fine. But for a woman to send her off, that was a worry on my parents' part. I must tell you that I gave Foreign Service as an option. I didn't tell them that I had to begin with. Not nice to do it, but at that point of time, they would not have permitted me to give the IFS. They were very happy I did, subsequently. So I think one of the things really is, what prepares one also is that you've got to be extremely very adjusting, because you stay away from your family, you're staying far away. You have to, the adjustment process is not easy. And what keeps women from joining really is very often, how do you manage your personal life and your career? So because everybody expects women or men to get married for that matter, but particularly women. Now, of course, if a man got married, his wife will travel with him around the world. But when a woman gets married, you've got to find a man who will travel with you, isn't it? Now, more and more young people, their young men are doing that, I think. My time, it was pretty rare. So I ended up marrying a colleague of mine when I did. So, these really were the challenges at the time that we joined. I really believe that it's a different kind of world now. And I think, there are more girls that are women that are joining the service. But it does require a lot of adjustment. You're away from your parents when they need you most, your families, you can be separated from your families. These are some of the more negative parts of being in the Foreign Service. Yeah, Vijay, have I answered you, or is there something?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Good evening.
Yes, Esther. I think I see you.
Yeah, my name is Esther. I'm from 7B.
Okay.
I would like to ask you the question. What inspired you in life, ma'am, to choose a career in Indian Foreign Service?
Okay, that's a good question. I was okay academically. I was quite good. I studied, I'm sure there are people who know this, in Chennai. I studied in Women's Christian College and Madras Christian College. There wasn't too much exposure to the world, But, one had heard of the Indian Foreign Service. And as I very honestly, I had very honestly told Mrs. Gandhi when she spoke to me, I said I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to have job security. But I think at some point of time, the inspiration also unstated, because when you're young, you don't think of it in those terms, was, it's a great, great honor. It's really a great honor to represent your country and to represent India and to represent India's interests. And when I say India, I am not talking about, just a concept of India. I'm talking about maybe you, Esther, each one of you who are citizens of India. When a diplomat is abroad, we work for the interests of each one of these citizens of India, because we are a democracy. And I think that is very uplifting in many ways, that you are working for the good of India, for the reputation of India, for the status of India, for the interests of India. So I think that perhaps was an inspiration in many ways. Fundamentally, I didn't know too much about what really the work of the Foreign Service was before I joined. I did have an uncle who was in the Foreign Service, but what did inspire me was that I really wanted to do something with myself. I did want to, in some way, contribute to India. And I think the Foreign Service gives you the best opportunity to do that. I could tell you something that we wear saris, we always wear saris, and we look very Indian, and we're there in international meetings. And there is great, great respect for not only women in saris, but for Indian diplomats. Because, we are not like other countries in the sense we are a civilization. India is an old country. It's a democracy. It stands for certain values. So, there is, and we are a huge, in fact, we're on the brink of becoming a big economic power. There is a lot of respect for India. So I think now when I look back, all of those things were inspirations, and to want to in some way serve my country. Is that okay, Esther?
Yeah. And could you kindly narrate for us students any real-life situation in your career where you had to encounter circumstances that made you feel proud of being an IFS officer?
Okay. Oh, that's really, there've been so many, experiences. I'm just trying to let me give you a second to think. Well, I'll tell you what, very often, some of the best experiences of life are when you have visits from, the leaders of other countries. So one of my most interesting and experiences, which I always will keep in my heart, was accompanying the Emperor and the Empress of Japan to India. They were coming to India after almost 50 or 60 years. They had traveled in 1960, and they were very keen to come to India. They were growing old. And I came with them on that visit to India. And I think, those kind of situations when you are traveling with people like that, of that position, you're explaining your country to them. You see their deep appreciation of India, what they think India is. Very often when we live in India, we take our country for granted. You'll be surprised in what high regard other countries, other people, leaders of other countries think of India. So, accompanying them, I think, to India, perhaps was one of the most, exciting moments that I can say that I experienced. But there have been so many. It's so difficult for me to, put my finger on any one of them. But there are many, many occasions. I recall, I could tell you something, that Indians, we're very, very good at negotiations. And when we were negotiating the climate change agreement, the whole agreement on climate change, now we take it for granted that climate change happens. In those days, it was very difficult to explain to the world what it was. And I think certainly that role that one played over there, that was really one of the highlights of one's life. I mean, there have been just too many for me to suddenly think and tell you, but you will have lots and lots of experiences, you know, meeting wonderful people, you know, contributing in so many ways, and on so many issues that affect the lives of all of us. You know, whether it is to do with, you know, nuclear energy, it could do with, you know, arms, which could wipe out the world. It could do with food security, to make sure that you get into India the kind of food that is required, you know, to give us food security. So there are lots and lots of, you know, different opportunities that come your way. Is that okay, Esther?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what can the students, like, you know, like every students have their own expectations. So what can a particular student expect in this career?
Okay. So what are the expectations? And, you know, it's the other way around. So what is it that sets the IFS apart from other careers? Let me tell you that way. Put it that way. So gives you an opportunity to serve your country. You represent your country. You've got to know India very well. You know, that is a great, great honor to be able to represent your country. And when I say represent your country, I just don't mind me flying the flag, which I have done. But I think more than flying the flag, it is to represent the interests of your country. You know, you identify what are the needs of your country, and you're able to get, whether it is investment into your country, whether it is an agreement with another country, you know, to be able to project the interests of your country. I think that is a hugely satisfying expectation that you have from your career. The other thing from the Foreign Service is that it gives you exposure to, you know, a very, very vast canvas in terms of the countries of the world that you can be. The whole world, in a way, is your oyster. That's one. Gives you opportunities to interact with, you know, different kinds of people and nationalities. If you work in the UN itself, at any point of time, you are interacting with people, you know, 192 other nationalities. This is a world, a microcosm of the world. And there to be able to project India's interests, you know, I think that is a great, it's hugely satisfying, empowering. So I think that is one kind of, you know, expectation that you can have from your career, that you will be, of course, furthering India's interests, that you will be having a whole, you know, host of experiences, which I think very few other careers give you. And it is not a non-substantive career, a non-substantive job, I could tell you that. You know, there are so many cases when it could be something of great importance. It could be something that is just, you know, where you get investment into some very important sector into India. And one of the things that I recall as I'm just talking is that when I was in Japan one day, I found that there was a news item about something called methane hydrates. Now, you know oil, you know gas, but there's something called methane hydrates, which is the future source of fuel for the world. And I found that Japan had made a breakthrough in being able to extract energy from methane hydrates. I just saw it in the newspaper. And from there, I was able to follow it through till I was able to ensure cooperation between Japan and India in the transfer of technology in being able to develop methane hydrates. So, you know, why I'm saying these are because the expectations are extremely vast. The canvas is what you want to make. You know, you can get technologies that are required for India. You can get aid that is required for India. You can get your oil security, I mentioned, things to do with your food security. You can take care of, you know, the interests of Indians around the world, strengthen political relations. It's just a very, very huge canvas. So I really do believe that, you know, in some ways the sky's the limit, and to a large extent it's what you make of it. I have to say, tell you, I think where it's different from a lot of the other civil services of India is that because you're outside, the direct political influences are less and gives you more freedom to really work on what you think are, and you're working for your country, you're not working for yourself, what you think are the objectives of India. Did I satisfy my answer? Satisfy you? Would you like a supplementary?
Yeah, clearly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am?
Yes. Yes, Samuel.
I would like to ask you, which stream should I pursue after class 12 if I want to join IFS?
Okay. That's an extremely good question. Now, I was trying to answer it another way. Now, what will happen is, Samuel, I'm sure your parents might want you to do something and you may have an inclination. You know, a lot of people, when I joined, there were a lot of people who had done economics or political science. You know, I myself did English literature. So you could do, follow different, whatever the academic thing that you want. But you can equally, your parents might want you to do something technical, like being an engineer or a doctor. Doesn't stop you from joining the Foreign Service. But if you single-mindedly want to look at the Foreign Service, what I would suggest, and you're not interested in other sort of technology, related jobs, like, whether it's to do with IT or whatever, then what I would suggest you could do is you could do either economics, because economics is very important in every aspect of the Foreign Service. In fact, it was a handicap for me because I had to learn economics. I didn't know enough when I first joined economics, and then you can go on, to do maybe a master's or something in international relations. So I think a combination of those two should be very helpful. So do international relations and economics. This basically more or less covers what you do, what you would need to do. But equally, do whatever you want to do. I mean, you may want to do something today. Your parents might want you to do something today. Go ahead, do it. But that will not stop you from coming into getting into the Foreign Service. I want to tell you that a very, very large numbers of those who join nowadays are from the IITs. They are IIT graduates. And people may say that, what a waste of studying for so long, doing an engineering degree. It's not true, because there are so many opportunities for them to be able to use what they have learned in the course of their careers. So do go ahead, go where your heart takes you, Samuel. And you can still at some point of time, keep reading what's happening in the world. Keep abreast of international relations. That is important. And keep also equally or more important is what is happening in your country. Because at the end of the day, we as diplomats are representatives of our country. We must know our country best for us to be able to be representatives outside. So do follow what you would like to do. And if there's no pressure to go into engineering or medicine or something, I think doing economics would be a good option.
Okay.
Will that help?
And yes. Yeah. And my second one is, what is the career progression of an IFS officer?
Okay. Excellent question. So I'll tell you what a career progression, how it goes is that, it's in the government generally. This is why we talk about job security in the government. So when we join, we first, I told you, we train in India, and then we are trainees, trainee officers, and the first posting you go and learn a language, and then you're called a third secretary language trainee. You're learning a language, whichever language it could be, Chinese, Russian, what have you, and the next thing that you do is you go to an embassy. Then you become you go up a ladder. There's a second secretary, there's a first secretary, then something called counselor, then called minister, and then called ambassador. Okay, I'm just telling you the levels there. But what is important is that today, in about between 20 to 25 years, you can aspire to become an ambassador. The ambassador means that you're the head of an embassy, and you have, you are the representative. You are the Actually, to explain what an embassy is I was telling you that an ambassador carries a letter from the president of India to the president of that other country, and everybody else who supports you are part of the embassy. So that's how it is. And it's pretty good, because you can be ambassadors. I was just seeing today that there's somebody who has become an ambassador at 19 years of service. So more or less today, between 20 to 30 years, you can become an ambassador. That is, you have your independent embassy. And the rest of it, when you come back to Delhi, there are certain, there are certain levels you go. But I want to tell you, it's a very, very quick rise. If you are competent, it is quite, it is really still, I think, an easier career to be able to progress in than, say, in the private sector.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else? I want to ask, let me ask you all, after what I've said, would you be interested in joining the Foreign Service? Is there anyone who feels? Yeah, yes, Esther.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bianca. That's wonderful. That's what's important thing. Start reading more about foreign relations. It's great fun. I started reading quite early, I must tell you. It was very interesting. Learn about China, learn about relationship with not only Pakistan, but, other countries where we had good relations, and see what really goes into diplomacy. And you'll find that very interesting. Incidentally, there is a website of the Ministry of External Affairs. And, that's a good place to go to see what really happens in the Ministry of External Affairs. I think it's called mea.nic.in. And just go and have a look and what are the aspects of, what does a Foreign Service officer do? I must tell you today that even our foreign minister is from the Foreign Service. So we find that, there are Foreign Service officers who've decided to join politics also. So do look at that site and find out, you'll get a lot of information there on what really happens. There are lots of pictures. Most embassies have Facebook, and other kind of websites as to what the activities are. So it's interesting to see what happens in the life of a diplomat.
So now I would like to invite our CEO, Mr. Kuriakose, to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. It was a wonderful talk and fruitful one, because Esther has expressed her interest in joining IFS, and that's the outcome of this talk. So I think this was a wonderful program. I would like to tell you, when Deepa ma'am prepared for IFS, there was no coaching centers. There's no coaching center in any part of India except in Delhi, probably one Rao's coaching center. So she had to do it all alone, I think. Prepared for the exam, and she got it through merit. But now the scenario is different. Even in Kerala, we have got 4 or 5 civil service academies. So if you want to really pursue this, you should start your preparations very well. And I think such talks will definitely inspire many of you. And this is one of the best careers. So I wish you all the very best in that. I thank Mr. Anil Wadhwa first, and then Deepa ma'am for gracing this occasion. On behalf of TRIS fraternity, TRIS is the Raja's International School, TRIS, in Kurchi, Kottayam, and Shalom Resident Public School, Chittoor, Palakkad, Sirinjaikad Public School, Thiruvalla, and our sister concerns in Nagarkovil. I thank you very much for this talk, ma'am. I look forward to having you again after a few months.
Thank you. I just hope that, when I was your age, I didn't know anything about the Foreign Service. So I would have loved to know when I was younger. So I think you start thinking about it. If it's a career that suits your personality, it's something that you'd like to do. But you have much more career options today than we had in our times. So there's a very exciting world waiting there for all of you. So look at what suits your personality, but certainly also think of the Foreign Service as an option. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.